I'm not,
Okay.
Sherry
Not
had her
dying.
hair done.
no, I washed it and cut it myself.
All right. Looks
Really? Wow.
Yep.
Okay, folks.
I haven't been for 6 months.
We are.
No hairdresser.
My
Hello?
hairdresser works out of her home now, so I go there.
Okay.
Mine
we're
comes to
live.
my driveway, so I
Mine
go
used to
nowhere.
until she built a place in her
You get
laundry room.
good. Hey, we're streaming on YouTube, you guys.
Okay.
Streaming on YouTube, so don't say anything you wouldn't want the whole world to hear. Okay, more people are starting to come in, so we're going to definitely wait a few more minutes.
Hi, Sally.
Hey, Sally, how you doing?
Where's Sally? I don't see her. Oh.
She's there.
There with Larry.
Hi, Sally.
Hi,
Hi, Sally
Larry.
and Larry, and hi, Susan and Lori and Ezra. And
Hello.
Elliot and Connie and
Hi,
Tonight's gonna be
Sandy.
the
Oh,
late
there's
night.
Sally. Hi, Sally. Oh, Sally, you're
Hi,
muted.
Judy.
Tonight's gonna be a very late night because between this, the ball game, the 2 town halls, and the West
Sherry.
Wing reunion.
you know what? Just
Sherry Bachman, are you turning in your ballot tomorrow?
No, I haven't even voted yet. No.
No, I know, I haven't either, but I thought I would vote after tonight. And I wanted someone to drive over to Goski Center.
No, I'm not going to drop it at Goski. I'm going out to the one on Gateway, to the
yeah,
election.
that's what I did today because
To the
I don't
registrar.
trust the- yeah.
That's what I did
That's
today.
where I went to.
Now, if you drop someone else's ballot off, like if I picked up Ruth's and dropped it off, do I have to sign?
No, I would go with you. I would just go.
You don't have
You
to
can just
sign.
put it in the mailbox.
The person whose ballot you're getting has to put your name on the envelope.
Uh,
No.
Okay, so
I don't know when I'm going.
One more
I don't know
minute.
when I'm going to go.
One more
We
minute.
give it one more minute because people keep coming in. So I want to make sure we give them the time to do that. But it's very nice to see so many people. And as we were saying before, there are a lot of people who've already voted, which is incredible. Like 14 million people have already voted, and we're
Yep.
like 3 weeks away from the election. So that shows you how engaged people are, which is
Well, maybe they don't have all these confusing ballot measures. like
They've,
California.
Well, I
people
will-
stood in line for hours to vote.
Right, right. No, I will say that I think doing legislation by ballot measure is not the best way to do it, because a lot of these things are written in ways that are very hard to understand, and it's people with money who usually can get the measures on the ballot. I don't know, maybe Joan and Greta will disagree with me, but right.
No, we don't disagree, but
All right.
I think we do need a citizens committee. Like we have our citizens redistricting committee that helps draw our districts.
League of Women
I think
Voters.
it would be good to have a citizens
Right.
initiative committee
Yeah.
to look them over and say, no, we can't send this to the people because this is going to go right to court.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to ask people to please mute themselves, except for our speakers. And
How to mute
hi,
ourselves.
Barbara or Gary. I want to introduce our 2 speakers, Joan Donahue and Greta Kost-Lent, who are both with the League of Women Voters. And they are going to enlighten us, not on every single proposition, because I think there are 10 state propositions and several local ones, but on some of the sort of bigger ones and the more controversial ones. So welcome, Joan and Greta, and
Thank you.
take it away.
All righty.
What do you do?
And by the way, you can, if you want to focus on who's speaking, you go to speaker view up
Right.
on the top right-hand corner.
Then everybody see my little screen, our little bear doing his homework? Everybody see that?
Can you do it in slideshow view so that it's bigger?
I can try sometimes.
Yeah, that's slideshow, and then from first.
Like that?
Do it. Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
Okay. I'll tell you what too, if you want to take our pictures off, looks like a little film strip on the right. If you go to the top, the little diminish or the minus button, if you click that, then we go away.
And also at the very top of your screen, it says view options, and it will give you a zoom ratio where you can make it bigger, and also side-by-side mode where you're seeing the person who's talking. So you can adjust it that way. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all righty. So we have there, you're going to find 12 propositions on your ballot, 11 initiatives, 1 referendum. We don't really have any this year that are especially confusing, like where a no means yes and a yes means no. But you do want to keep your eye on the last one. 25 is a referendum. So a yes vote on that means, yes, I like this law and I want to keep it. And a no vote on that one means, no, I don't like this law, so let's take it off the books. So we're gonna go up. You all did a great job and talked about Prop 15 already, so we'll start here. And affirmative action dates back.
Did you decide on 15? I didn't hear about 15.
I think you all had a meeting about 15, right, Rabbi?
Tuesday night, yeah.
We had a
Well,
whole session about it last week, but can we hold questions?
I missed that one totally.
Well, I'm sorry, but can you guys mute yourself?
what was the consensus? Was
Okay,
it?
you know what? We'll talk about it later. Let's let Joan do her presentation and then we'll talk about other
Well,
things.
15 was one of the difficult ones.
I know, that's why we had a whole session about it, but we can't do it right now. So let's hold off on that, okay?
We can always wrap up at the end too.
About 14, you're not gonna do 14?
Right.
You know what? We're not doing all of them. So please just let Joan give her presentation, okay?
But I tell you what, though, at the end, any one of them that you have a question about, you could feel free to ask me. So we'll go through like what are the more popular ones, the ones that are drawing the most attention, and then at the end we take questions. You can ask me anything you want. So we'll start with 16, and affirmative action dates back to 1965. When President Lyndon Johnson issued an executive order requiring all government contractors and subcontractors to take affirmative action to expand job opportunities for minorities. 2 years later, it was expanded to include women. Now, over time, the Supreme Court rulings have constrained what is allowable under affirmative action programs. Quotas and set-asides are disallowed. Governments are required to show compelling interest and narrowly tailor programs to further that interest. Weighing candidates based on race was disallowed unless all candidates were reviewed in their entirety. Now in California, we passed Proposition 209 back in 1996, which prohibits the state from granting preferential treatment to any individual group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. Now, the California Assembly put Prop 16, this one, on the ballot because they contend that in the wake of Prop 209, the ban, the state has seen steep declines in diversity in higher education, the workforce, government contract awards, and increases in income inequality and equal pay for equal work. So this proposal simply repeals Proposition 209, requires the state to follow federal guidelines. So that means no quotas, must demonstrate a compelling interest, and all the candidates must be reviewed in their entirety. The proposition does not recommend any programs to be reinstated. That will be decided down the line. Now, in support, and let me point out to you too, as we go through our support and oppose slides, the top 3 names that you see listed there, this one, Quinn Delaney, Kaiser, and Patricia, those are the top donors. So in support, the committee is called Opportunity for All. They've raised $19 million. They say, despite living in the most diverse state in the nation, women and people of color currently are still discriminated against in California. These impediments to upward mobility are a direct legacy of past and present racism. Prop 16 is one obvious step in the right direction that goes straight to the heart of systematic racism. In opposition, we have Californians for Equal Rights. They've raised $1 million. They say the state should treat everyone equally when deciding who gets into college or who gets a government job. We should not favor one racial or ethnic group over another. Approval of Prop 16 would be a step backward, introducing a new form of discrimination and perpetuating the stereotype that minorities and women can't make it unless they get special preferences. So do we have any discussion on this one? Anybody have any questions on affirmative action?
I do.
Go
Not a
ahead.
question, a statement.
Go ahead.
Nobody would need preferential treatment if it were a level playing field in the first place. But it is not a level playing field. And voting yes on Proposition 16 would help to level that playing field.
Okay, that's a good point. Anybody else have any thoughts similar to that? I have a favorite quote I'm going to share with you, and then we will move on. But it was in the New Yorker, but I think this kind of sums everything up. Excuse me. The reason we have affirmative action is that we once had slavery and Jim Crow. We had all white police forces, we had all white union locals, and we had all white college campuses and all white law firms. For hundreds of years, the United States had a racial quota, and it was 0. Affirmative action is an important attempt to redress an injustice done to Black people. I think that was well said by George Schultz.
Where is the majority of discrimination taking place now?
I beg your pardon?
Where is this discrimination taking place?
This focuses on universities, admission to universities, government contracts in California. There was a study done recently by UC Berkeley, and they say California's ban on affirmative action has significantly harmed Black and Latino students by reducing their enrollment across University of California campuses, lowering graduation rates and driving down subsequent wages. So it did, when they passed 209, it did have an effect. They saw
If I were Asian, I might not be thrilled with this.
You know what? That's a point that you hear a lot, but the fact of the matter is, in this same study, they showed that when the ban went in, before the ban went into effect, affirmative action didn't really have that big of an impact on the Asian community, because those students were able to, maybe they didn't get into Berkeley, but they were able to apply and get into other prestigious.
Are you saying other minority students can't get into these schools?
No, I'm sorry.
Are you saying that discrimination is keeping minority students out of these UC campuses?
That's what the California legislature has determined. That there has been
through a scientific survey, through scientific research.
Right. I can tell you the methodology that Berkeley used. Asian Americans and whites were not significantly disadvantaged. Okay, he tracked more than 2,000 UC applicants between 1996 and 1999 to see whether they were admitted, where they ultimately enrolled, and their economic outcomes. He followed applicants' wage earnings through their early 30s. So, I mean, it's a pretty complete study. Okay, let me get my screen back up here. You know what? Now I'm having a hard time finding let's just go so we can move a little bit faster, I think. Let's see here. Here we go. Proposition 17, to allow people on parole for felony convictions to vote in California. So Prop 17 is a constitutional amendment that would allow people on parole to vote. People who are currently in county jail, on probation, or on every other form of post-release community supervision are allowed to vote, but people on parole are not. California will join 17 other states that allow people on parole to vote. The reason for the parole voting restriction can be traced to the post-Civil War era when felony disenfranchisement became one favored method utilized by 12 states in suppressing the African American vote. After 1890, many states began enacting disenfranchisement statutes and constitutional provisions that listed crimes for which African Americans were most often prosecuted, such as burglary, theft, perjury, and arson. These were all disqualifying offenses. Technically, parole is supervised reentry into the community after release from state prison. Parolees agree to certain terms and conditions, such as living in a specified county, consenting to be searched at any time, and other conditions like no weapons and no associating with gang members. The purpose of parole is to retrain offenders to be good citizens. Some fiscal impact here. Prop 17 would require the state to update its voting system to reflect people on parole. So that's like a one-time cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. In support for this one, we have the Free the Vote Coalition. They have raised a little over $1 million. This is another proposition with strong support from the Democratic Party and liberal-leaning groups. They say when people complete their prison sentences, they should be encouraged to re-enter society and have a stake in their community. Restoring voting rights does that. Nearly 50,000 Californians who have returned home from prison can't vote even though they are raising families, holding jobs, paying taxes, and contributing to society in every other way. No organized opposition, but the ballot argument for this one in the state voter guide against 17 is submitted by the founder of a crime victims organization. She says, parole in California is for serious and violent criminals who have victimized innocent citizens. Giving people on parole social equality before full rehabilitation will add to victims' pain and suffering. Parole is to prove rehabilitation before full liberty, including voting rights, is restored. All righty, any thoughts on restoring voting rights for parolees? Any thoughts on that one?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any percentages as to how many people go back to prison after when they're on parole, or how many stay?
Oh, recidivism? Well, you know what? As far as this measure goes, I think we would want to look and see how many on parole are committing crimes and so forth, and so maybe they shouldn't be allowed to vote.
I think
behavior, but we
Can I
don't have any of those kind of
can I say
statistics.
something about that?
yeah.
I can tell you if they're
I just want to say something about the issue of recidivism. Recidivism rates are pretty bad, generally. But you have to take into consideration the fact that people who are let out of prison have received just about no rehabilitation. They're stopped from usually being able to get a job because they have a felony on their record. They can't find places to live. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why people, recommit crimes, which is why when we eventually get to Proposition 20, the idea is to use some of the money that we use for, putting people in prison and trying to help them, with either a drug problem or a mental health problem or whatever it is, so that they might be able to actually become productive members of society. Martha, you had something you wanted to say?
I have my hand up too.
Just a little bit. I believe that one of the pamphlets we got mentioned that a study was done and indicated that by that study anyway, those people who were allowed to vote during parole time were less likely to reoffend.
Right.
And
Good point.
again, that
That's in Florida, Martha, in Florida.
yeah, okay, well,
That, and I'll tell you, that's one of the points that the proponents point to a lot. That studies show when people feel connected to communities,
Right.
they're less likely to be reincarcerated. And this, now see, I don't have the specific studies for you all to quote, but it says recidivism rates are lower in states that allow parolees to vote.
Good point.
That makes sense because they have a bigger stake in society.
Right.
Yeah.
Is Judy, did you want to say anything else or was that?
No, that was it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's part of the whole rehabilitation thing is having people be able to get jobs and places to live and feel part of the community. And if they don't, unfortunate things happen, but.
Right. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and we'll move on to,
I have one quick question.
oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Can they vote now if they're finished with parole and probation?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sure. Okay, so. Oops. All righty, so we'll go up to 20 now that Rabbi was speaking about. Proposition 20. Changes to criminal penalties and parole. Key word here being parole, I think. This has a lot to do with parole. For the past 20 years, California has legislated reductions in tough on crime policies. California legislation reduced punishment for parole violators. Voters passed Prop 47, which recategorized some nonviolent crimes as misdemeanors. Voters passed Proposition 57, giving inmates convicted of certain nonviolent offenses a chance for early release. Now, this is our law and order proposition. So that leniency pendulum swings back with Proposition 20. The proposal changes designation of some crimes. So it would make specific types of theft and fraud crimes, including firearm theft, vehicle theft, and unlawful use of credit cards, chargeable as misdemeanors or felonies, rather than strictly misdemeanors. It would require persons convicted of certain misdemeanors that were classified as either misdemeanors or felonies before 2014 to submit to the collection of DNA samples for state and federal databases. These would include shoplifting, grand theft, drug possession, domestic violence, and prostitution with a minor. Changes in parole. Currently, felons convicted of nonviolent crimes could be released on parole upon completing their sentence with the longest imprisonment term. Prop 20 would require the Parole Review Board to consider additional factors, such as a felon's age, marketable skills, attitude about the crime, and mental condition, as well as the circumstances of any previous crimes. The ballot initiative would also define 51 crimes and sentence enhancements as violent in order to exclude them from the parole review program. Fiscal impact for this one: increases in state and local correctional costs and court costs, likely to be in the tens of millions of dollars annually, related to increases in penalties for and the changes to the parole process. All right, in support, we have Keep California Safe. That's the main coalition. They raised $3.5 million. They say Prop 20 would not increase the prison population. It would only ensure that people convicted of these crimes serve their full sentence. Prop 20 will help stop car break-ins, shoplifting, and other theft that has been on the rise. Now, in opposition, we have Californians Against the Prison Spending Scam. That's the name of their coalition. They've raised $6.5 million. They say Californians have overwhelmingly voted to reduce wasteful prison spending, Prop 20 reverses that progress. Rehabilitating people before prison release is the most effective way to improve public safety. Prop 20 would eliminate funding for what works and waste money on more prisons that we don't need. Okay, so Rabbi, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you. I really do. So I worked, and RAC California, the Religious Action Center of California, worked very hard to get Propositions 47 and 57 passed. I don't know if there were some people here in this group that actually were involved in that or not, but you know, putting people in prison and not, as I said, providing rehabilitation or opportunities when they come out, you know, only results in more recidivism. It does not make our community safer or healthier. So 47 reduced from felony to misdemeanor crimes that were at 900, more than 900, I'm sorry, reduced from felony to misdemeanor crimes that were under $950. I mean, theft of $950. So it had been $750 and they raised it to $950. This proposition lowers it to $250.
Oh, God.
Anything that is more than $250 becomes a felony. And I'd like to point out that that is about the lowest in the entire country. I think Texas actually, their limit is $2,500. So if it's more than $2,500, it becomes a felony, but not under $2,500. So you can see how many more people will be put in jail or prison as a result of this. Proposition 57 provided that people could reduce their sentence if they were involved in rehabilitation or education. So the issue there is what is defined as a violent crime. So unfortunately, and I don't really understand why or how this happened, but the definition of what is considered a violent crime does not include all violent crimes. Again, I don't understand how this was developed, and there was some reason, but I don't really know why. So what, and by the way, this proposition was put on the ballot by DAs. So they're saying, well, you know, if you commit a violent crime, why should you be entitled to reduce your sentence? And the answer to that is, do you want people who are in prison to come out, which they will, and come into your community with absolutely no rehabilitation or education? You can imagine that, you know, when people go to prison, they end up often becoming better criminals, right? So it really just is a very regressive approach to crime and to public safety. It's going to cost a lot of money because you're going to put way more people in jail and prison, which means higher taxes. And right now, the savings from Proposition 47 that, you know, reduced from felony to misdemeanor property crimes and some other crimes, that savings has been used to fund mental health treatment. So that's going to go away. So those are just some of the reasons I'm very involved in no on Proposition 20 right now. I'm working with a number of different groups. RAC California is also opposed to this proposition, as are a whole number of groups. I'm sure there are different opinions about this, but I just did want to express my, you know, concern about this one, which I think will put us back quite a number of years. Martha.
Has there been any talk about this proposition being supported by private prison groups that have it in their best interest to increase the prison population?
Well, the prison guards are definitely behind this.
Yeah, I can speak to this one. This is a good one to follow the money, because we like to do that when we look at our propositions. And this one, the Correctional Peace Officers Association, okay, they have donated $2 million. So they have a total of 3.5 million. 2 million of that is from the Correctional Peace Officers Association. You know, the inmate population has declined. From, let's see, I have from 173,000 to 128,000, more than 25% between 2006, 2018. So the decline threatens the association. You have fewer inmates, you have fewer officers needed. So, you know, you have some reforms there. They want to keep more people behind bars, it obviously seems like. And the other thing, I tell you, the other thing that jumps out about this is when you look at their website, the Yes on 20 website, it's like, where are the statistics that tell us that this proposition caused this increase in crime? It's like the only thing they've got, and this is true, auto theft has gone up. That's the only one they can trace. But all these others, it's like, well, why if all these people off parole are committing all these crimes, why don't you have facts for that on your website? Instead, they have these real scary videos. And like,
Well, you know what? Crime has actually gone down.
And it's
Yeah,
just,
with a quick question for Suzanne.
What are the,
Hang on, Judy, and then Ezra.
Just very quick question. When you were talking about monies for mental health that would be lost, are you talking about mental health after prisoners get out of prison, during their imprisonment, or for people as a whole?
Not during. It's to treat people of mental health, you know, and it might be a diversion program from the court or something, but yeah, it's money that's gone to the Department of Health that would just disappear. And
but
then,
was it geared for people released from prison, or was it for the general population? I just couldn't.
I'm pretty sure it's the general population.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't absolutely swear to that, but I think that's what it is. You know, we don't have a lot of money for mental health. So this would be, Ezra?
I guess what I don't understand is the objection to some of the things here. And I'm kind of an agnostic on a lot of this, but this would prevent child molesters, sexual predators, and other violent inmates from being released early from prison.
Okay, that's really a
Proposition 20 closes this loophole, making crimes like date rape, child trafficking, spouse beating, and assault with a deadly weapon violent under the law. It does not allocate funds for new prisons, nor slash funding for mental health and rehabilitation programs. As for the petty crimes, the problem that I think most people see is that you've got these repeat offenders. So even if you're lowering the theft cap to $250, it's very unlikely anybody who steals $250 worth of anything is going to be charged with a felony. But if they're charged with a misdemeanor, they're probably going to be released with an appearance ticket. And if they get caught 3 more times over the next few months, they're going to continue to be released. So while this may be overkill, this proposition, it certainly is pointing to some problems that the current law has, which is we've got serious criminals out there who are being let go early.
Okay, so let me just say that I think that is a complete mischaracterization of the bill by saying that they're going to be released early. They're only released early if they are participating in one of these programs. And you don't just automatically get to go into one of these programs. You have to be accepted by, you know, the powers that be. And I believe also the DA, because I was talking to somebody I know who's in prison right now and who's going to try to, you know, get involved in one of those programs. The DA has to say it's okay, the judge, the people at the prison. You can't just, you know, waltz in and you know, get this program and get out of jail free. You know, you get out early if you've completed the program and you've done it satisfactorily.
What do you want to do about chronic criminals?
Well, you know, I think that unfortunately, a lot of people are in prison because they have a drug problem, they have a mental health problem, they're homeless, and people can't find jobs that pay decent amounts of money. There are, of course, career criminals, and there are people who are, you know, who deserve to be in prison. But I think a lot of this has its roots in social and economic problems that really need to be tackled. And that's why the money that was saved through 47 is allowing us to tackle at least some of the mental health issue.
I agree with you, but what do we do in the meantime?
I think as you said, it's overkill. I mean, if Texas has a $2,500 limit before it becomes a felony, how are we going to have a $250 limit? I mean, that is really extreme.
It's not going to happen.
Maybe, but
Well, that actually,
That
and
gives them, I think that gives them the option to charge a felony. It doesn't require it.
But what about those crimes that you mentioned that are horrendous? You know, you were talking about the battery and sexual assault and things like that.
right.
Child molesters, sexual predators.
As I said when I explained it, you know, unfortunately, the definition of violent crime is under some code, and I don't know why they didn't include all those other crimes. And it's not that I'm saying, oh, well, who cares about those crimes? It's that they might have the possibility of getting some help, which means that when they go back to the community, there's a chance they won't reoffend, as opposed to just sending them out there with nothing. And there's no guarantee they're even going to get in the program. You know, you have to, you know, be eligible. So I just think it's a very regressive proposition. It's hitting it with a very, very heavy hammer. I mean, the bill, I mean, the propositions 47 and 57 were definitely not perfect. But again, this is trying to solve the problem in the most extreme way, I think. But you can disagree, obviously.
Okay, anybody else to that one? Yes, Rosalind?
The thing that did it for me, the minute I saw Devin Nunes's name in support, I had to vote no. Anything Devin Nunes supports, I am not supporting.
He's given, his campaign has given a chunk of change to this. Yeah, he's a backer.
Roz, say why.
Have you followed Devin Nunes over the
Some of the
last
people
few
haven't.
years?
Explain why, Roz.
Devin Nunes is a white supremacist in Latino clothing. He's a Trump backer. He is antithetical to everything I stand for. So if he supports it, I don't.
There you go.
Interesting.
Thank you, Ross.
Okay, are we ready? Because we're going to move on to Greta next. So you get a little break from me. And Greta's going to talk about the famous Prop 22 that we are hearing so much about. Let me get it up. Greta, you need to unmute yourself. Let me see here.
There you go. How's that?
That's good. Wait a second. Let me.
Okay, yes, I have Proposition 22 and 25 that I was asked to go over.
Okay, wait a sec. I gotta.
22, you're on 21. 25.
There we go. We're ready.
Okay. So Proposition 22 is the ride share and delivery driver proposition. And it's best to know up front that this proposition is sponsored by Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, as well as some other delivery companies. A little history here. During the 2019 legislative session, the legislature passed Assembly Bill 5. The law codified a state Supreme Court ruling, making it much harder for companies to treat their workers as independent contractors rather than full-fledged employees. In practice, it threatened the business model of companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, all of which rely on an army of phone-toting workers to provide their various services. In the months since this passed, California's Attorney General has sued Uber and Lyft for violating the new law, and California regulators have declared that their drivers are employees. Thus, we welcome you to Proposition 22. Proposition 22 proposes that rideshare and delivery drivers will remain independent contractors, but the businesses will be required to provide additional benefits. A basic net earning based on 120% of the state's or municipality's minimum wage. The salary is based only on the time spent driving. Waiting for a call is not included. Healthcare subsidies, occupational accident insurance, and accidental death insurance. The health insurance subsidy is cut in half if a driver misses an engaged hours or a driving time target. Supporting Proposition 22 is Save app-based jobs and services. Next crime, next slide, Joan.
There we go.
All right, there we go. They have raised $186 million. Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash have each donated over $45 million. Save app-based jobs and services says, classifying drivers as employees as required under AB 5 will lead to longer wait times, higher prices, and less access to rideshare and delivery services. And like at AB 5, Proposition 22 would improve delivery and rideshare work by requiring companies to provide additional benefits and expand public safety protection. Those opposing are the Coalition to Protect Riders and Drivers. And it's leading the campaign in the opposition to this ballot. It has raised almost 14 million, primarily from unions, and you can see that listed there. They say this measure is a brazen attempt by some of the richest corporations in California to avoid paying minimum wage, healthcare, paid sick leave, unemployment insurance, and workers' compensation coverage. 78% of the drivers are from communities of colors, and 70% work more than 30 hours a week. The fiscal impact is pretty much negligible. If rideshare businesses stay cheap, drivers could work more, earn more money, and pay a little more in income tax.
So questions on 22. What do you think about that one? Anybody? I see Karen's lips moving.
I'm still confused on it.
Let's see. Somebody's confused?
No, I'm still confused.
How
What
so?
do the drivers want?
Well, that's a good question. What do the drivers want?
They say that 4 out of every 5 drivers want to stay contracted. But you know, the validity of that's coming from Lyft and Uber is always under question. So
I thought they wanted to be independent.
yeah, yes, I can tell you that I'm a frequent user of Uber and Lyft, and I always ask them that question, and they always say, no, I don't want to be an employee. I want to be an independent contractor.
So which way do you vote in order to be independent? Is it for or against?
You vote yes.
Yes for this.
However, I
Where
have a
does the-
comment. I have a comment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
When I was 21 years old, I worked as an independent contractor, and guess what? No Social Security was paid in. So I was missing a whole bunch of points on Social Security. So that's a negative.
And some other things that have been pointed out that are not included in the benefits are paid leave, unemployment insurance, discrimination protection, and the right to organize.
Yeah, and my impression was that AB 5 guaranteed paid family leave, 6 days, and unemployment insurance, and that if this passes, it takes that away. I mean, doesn't this negate AB 5, which already exists? And
No, go ahead, Greta. If it passes, it means it will create like a separate type of workforce. Is that right? They will be exempt. If this passes, the rideshare delivery drivers will be exempt from AB 5, is the way I understand it.
Are you saying that most of these people who are doing this driving do not have other jobs, full-time jobs from which they are drawing their benefits?
Some of them are doing this to supplement their income as having a second job. For other people, it may be their only job.
And you know what? And a lot of people too do this when they're in between jobs.
Right.
So it becomes like a full-time job. And keep in mind too, there's some things to keep in mind here, because like Uber says, oh, it's going to be minimum wage, but you're only paid for the time that you're driving, and a third of your time can be sitting there waiting for another call. So if you factor that in to the minimum wage, it comes out really as 80% below the minimum wage.
There is another consideration, and it's a federal consideration. There's something called the Fair Labor Standard Act, which defines who is a contractor and who is an employee. And I can see no way that these individuals are independent contractors. They actually are employees and should be treated as employees.
And in fact, the California Attorney General has stated that they are employees.
May I say something?
Well, you know why these companies are fighting this so hard, because their whole business model is built on this contractor. If they have to start treating their employees as regular employees, it's going to cost them a fortune. Uber, how much money they made? Uber last year made $14 billion with a B. And they're also, I have to tell you too, because this Greta and I had fun researching this one. It was like the more we read about it, the more eye-opening kind of things we saw. Uber is not noted as being an ethical company. Let me tell you some of that. I found this fascinating. They implemented surge pricing, in other words, gouging, during terrorist attacks in London, Paris, and Sydney. When hackers stole personal data of 75 million customers and drivers in 2016, Uber illegally concealed the breach for over a year and attempted to buy off the hackers. Who does that? This was, I can't even believe this. In 2016, they started to test drive self-driving cars without a permit. In San Francisco, the cars routinely drove through red lights and made dangerous illegal turns across bicycle lanes. The California DMV had to step in and revoke the vehicle's registrations.
That's not the issue. The issue is independent contractors or employees. They put their business model out there. People chose whether to take that job or not. Now they're trying to remake their business model. If they want something else, then they need to find another job.
Sometimes there aren't a lot of other options. We need to
That's
keep
why
that
this
in
gave
mind.
them a good option.
I'm sorry?
Then this gave them a good option. I mean,
It's not a great option.
See how they can now remake their business model. They never, Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and all those, they've never changed their business model. They've never lied about their business model. This is what they are.
Well, and in fact, they're hedging on these benefits. If they're telling you that they're going to be paying people minimum wage or 120, whatever that is, 120%, it's like, no, not if you're only paying the people when they're driving. You're not paying the person when they're sitting by their phone praying for somebody to call them to go pick them up. Or if they don't put in a certain number of hours, then their health care stipend, whatever, is slashed in half. You know, they aren't making those things clear.
Rosalind's had her hand up for a while, so let's let her speak.
When AB 5 was passed, Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash immediately went to work to get rid of its provisions to help the drivers. If Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash do not like AB 5, let them go back to the legislature, let them plead their case. Don't spend $186 million so that you can keep $14 billion in profits, of which you pay very little in taxes. I'm sorry, I don't trust Uber. I don't trust Lyft. I've never used them, never will. They exploit their workers.
But did the
You're going to have to blame the
workers-
political process then, because it allows them to put an initiative on the ballot.
All right.
Yeah, and
It doesn't mean we have to pass it.
That's right. And they got the signatures necessary to put this on the ballot because they had the money that was necessary.
Because they used paid signature gatherers.
Martha, go ahead.
Do the workers, and that's what I keep hearing, mixed messages. Many of the workers, from what I understand, prefer the flexibility of being independent because it allows them to plug themselves in and out of the process as needed, and it allows them to take this as a second or even third job if needed, odd hours, odd times, if they're students, if they're parents. And the minute it all gets kind of finalized into a format of a regular employee, they lose that. And I think many of them would prefer the flexibility to the added benefit that may be questionable if you start really looking at it, more carefully. So, but
I think that's true. You know what? I just want to make sure, don't confuse flexibility with independence. Because a lot of, these, they want the flexibility, but they also need benefits. I mean,
but they have some with AB5. I mean, I don't know how I'm voting yet, but one of the things I've been made aware of is that even though I'm inclined to vote no because of my understanding of how Uber and Lyft operate and the enormous profits that they make, but I talked to people who run like arts organizations, which operate on a shoestring to begin with, and they hire contracted drivers who, don't charge very much, and some of them have had to go out of business because they can't afford to pay higher prices for drivers who do a multitude of things. So it's a very complex proposition, I think. And it's hard to make a moral decision. And I do agree that the problem is with the political process. As you said at the beginning, Suzanne, these things should not be legislated through ballot options.
The LA Times had an article 5 days ago, in the business section. And it was a very long article about Uber and Lyft drivers who, when they were accepting a job, were sending along with that acceptance a please vote no on 22 email to the people they were going to pick up. So where you're getting this information that most drivers want to remain independent is coming from Uber and Lyft.
No, Roz, it
necessarily
isn't.
coming from the
Karen,
drivers.
my daughter uses it all the time. Every driver she spoke to says they want to remain independent. Every single one.
Do they know the difference between independent and flexible and what they'd be giving up? Have they actually been told?
That's what they want.
Well, this is a great group of women, huh?
One thing no one's mentioned is that a lot of the Uber drivers have been reported doing crimes on their patrons. I mean, this is not new. I mean, you're making a face, but it's not new. And I think that's part of the hiring process is they're not checking the drivers. They're not doing a background check on these drivers. And that might happen if they had better, if they had to have them as real employees, they might have to do background checks on them.
You mean they're going to become ethical suddenly because they're employees? I don't buy that.
No, you would do the background checks, and if you found a person that was a possible problem, you wouldn't hire them, unless they don't care. And then if they don't care, then it's the onus on the company. The onus is right now on the driver more than the company.
How many people are doing this in California? Do we know?
Doing
how many?
Oh, how many
driving?
No, I don't know.
I heard it ran into hundreds of thousands.
I could be.
Are they going to go out of business if this?
They're going to leave California.
This
fails?
is Joan. They do background checks now on the drivers. Just don't send people out to pick up people. They do background checks.
I guess, and the reason for my face was I've read a lot about this, and I have not read any issues about the lack of background checks. So I don't know where you saw or read that, but it could be. I mean, I don't know, but I didn't.
No, there are background checks, Gail.
Someone's
But
asking the question.
that they did say that when the Attorney General said that they had to be employees, they said that they would then leave California. Now, whether that would really happen, I'm sure they make a lot of money in California, but.
So somebody is asking the question, will being an employee make a person more accountable? I don't know if you can answer that, but that was the question.
Being an employee makes a person more what?
Accountable.
Accountable.
I would assume so.
Accountable to whom?
I'm just repeating the question that was asked, so I don't know.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would think so.
I have a question.
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Okay, I just want to clarify. Uber and Lyft are sponsoring this. Uber and Lyft want you to vote yes on 22. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in theory, the drivers want you to vote no. In
Correct.
theory. That's
Yes.
what we're hearing.
Drivers want to become independent.
Well, independent means vote no. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So the
The drivers want to continue working for Uber and Lyft. I think they would be voting yes if you wanted to stay independent.
But no, they want to be independent. They want you
Yeah.
to vote no.
They want you to vote no. My daughter said the same thing. She's talked
They
to
don't
many
want to
of the
carve out
drivers.
an exception for Lyft and Uber?
They still will work for them. They'll get minimum coverage for health, not if they were regular full-time employees, but they like the independence. At least that's what the drivers say. I don't know. I don't know.
Fred, I think
No.
we can verify
I think that means they like the way it was.
Yes.
Okay.
And they want to
Can we
stay
move
that
on
way.
to the next? I think we need to move
Exactly.
on.
So they would be voting yes.
No,
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 they're voting no. They
You
want things to
guys,
stay the
It's
same.
cacophonous. It's almost
Yes.
impossible to hear.
Yeah, let's I think we need to move on to the next proposition
Okay.
because obviously we're not going to solve the problem. We just need to know what's involved. And now we know, and now we're more confused. Okay.
Apparently.
Okay,
Okay.
I have to say, I lost that last conversation, but I'm going to leave that. Boy, I thought this one would be the easier of the two, so this makes this one really intense. This is the one I have had the most angst about. This is Proposition
Yeah, me
25.
too.
Okay.
You can mute us.
I'm sorry, someone also posted that they couldn't hear me. I wasn't loud enough. Does it help if I lean in a little bit like this?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
All right, it makes my head look really big, but that's okay. This is a referendum to overturn a 2018 law, Senate Bill 10, that replaced money bail system with a system based on public safety risk. A yes vote is to uphold Senate Bill 10, which would replace cash bail with risk assessments for detained suspects awaiting trials. A no vote is to repeal Senate Bill 10, thus keeping in place the use of cash bail for detained suspects awaiting trial. The background on this, Proposition 25 is all about SB 10. Basically, it asks for your approval or disapproval of this Senate bill. SB 10 would replace the state's cash bail system with risk assessments to determine whether a detained suspect should be granted pretrial release and under what conditions. The risk assessments would categorize suspects as low, medium, or high risk. Suspects deemed as having a low risk of failing to appear in court and a low risk to public safety would be released from jail, while those deemed a high risk would remain in jail with a chance to argue for their release before a judge. Those deemed a medium risk could be released or detained depending on the local court's rules. SB 10 would exempt suspects of misdemeanors, with some exceptions, from needing a risk assessment to be released. SB 10 would require the superior courts to establish pretrial assessment divisions, which would conduct risk assessments and make recommendations for conditions of release. The fiscal impact of Proposition 25, it would impact the state and local governments, impact on state and local governments is hard to predict. We could see spending increase in the mid hundreds of millions per year, dependent on the increase in court costs for bond hearings, and savings in the high tens of millions per year due to a smaller jail population. Support. Yes on Prop 25 is leading the campaign in support of a yes vote to uphold Senate Bill 10. It's another long list of Democrats, a few organizations, and unions. They have raised almost $11 million. They say the current bail system is unfair. If you cannot afford bail, you must stay in jail. Proposition 25 means that decisions will be based on public safety, not a person's ability to pay, and people who are eventually found not guilty or not even charged may be stuck with large debts to pay off the bail or the fees. Organization opposing this, Californians Against the Reckless Bail Scheme, is leading the campaign in support of a no vote to repeal Senate Bill 10. It is financed by the bail bond industry and has a long list of supporters. They have raised $6 million. They say releasing people from jail will make our communities less safe. Proposition 25 will cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year, overburdening courts and creating a new bureaucracy. And one more thing, it is important to know that the ACLU and the NAACP are opposing this proposition. While they support replacing money bail system with a system based on public safety risks, they state that the risk assessment tools or computer algorithms is racially and socioeconomically biased. While they support moving away from cash bail, they do not believe that this is the bill that will do that. And they are asking for a no on 25.
Greta, could I say a couple things about this bill as well?
Go for it.
So I also worked very hard on the SB 10 bill to get it passed. However, what happened was the ACLU, RAC California, a whole bunch of organizations were behind this bail bill until it was finally released. And behind the scenes, Senator Hertzberg, who had sponsored it, and Governor Brown and other people rewrote it. And it became an unacceptable bill, except it only came out 72 hours before there was a vote on it. And we had done a major amount of, lobbying people to vote for it. And then we were against it, but it was too late. And it's exactly because of these risk assessment tools that are racially biased, and also because it puts a lot of discretion in the hands of judges. So I was actually also very torn about this, because on the one hand, I was opposed to SB 10 by the time it was written. On the other hand, the question is there some way to get this passed and to fix some of the problems with it later? Because if this doesn't pass, the bail bondsmen are going to, basically be victorious, and it'll probably be a long time before we'll have a chance to get rid of money bail again. So very torn about which way to vote on it. I won't tell you how I voted, but I'm just,
Okay, and thank you for that. That was a good background. I also have read this statement from the Human Rights Watch, which I'm sure you're familiar with as well. But what they're saying, they're proposing a better system. And they say this may well be a superior system, but it is not on the ballot. Proposition 25 has two choices, yes or no. There is no essay section. I just love that. You can't write a 3-page paper about it. So if Proposition 25 fails, the message received in Sacramento will be that they want to preserve bail. So it's a conundrum. I don't know.
And the reason there is a proposition on the ballot is because after SB 10 passed, the bail bondsmen took it to court, and it was basically held up until this decision is made by voters, right?
Now, I'm curious about this equation, the algorithm. I guess it's our AI algorithm. It calculates the risk. Then it's based on, let's see, the personal demographic data. So the potential for bias is great. However, as I understand it, the state is going to adjust it regularly. They'll be taking a look at it. And maybe we can find something like fair and safe perimeters to get into this equation. In any event, the argument I hear is it's still an improvement over cash bail.
Are there any states using something like that now?
New York I just saw that. Let's see. New York just has changed the state law this year to end cash bail for cases involving misdemeanors or nonviolent felonies. So in a limited sense, you have New York. Then I'm pretty sure I've heard of some other cities, I think on the East Coast, that are giving this thing a try. But for California to do this, we would be the first really bit like state to enact something like this. Rosalind?
Okay, two things. First of all, I do agree that the algorithm is flawed, but I think the NAACP is cutting off its nose to spite its face when they say to vote no and reinstate money bail. That's not going to fix the algorithm. Secondly, my daughter is a public defender. Most of her clients end up in jail having not yet been convicted because they haven't gone to trial yet, because they are poor and they cannot afford the bail. Even at 10% of what bail is set, which is usually what a bond is, they can't afford it. Some of her clients languish in jail for as long as 2 years prior to trial without a conviction. Where is the justice in that? And then by the time they finally do go to trial, if in fact they are found not guilty, they return home to no job because they've been out of work for 2 years. It's just, the crime they're convicted of is being poor for the most part. Money bail hurts the poor more than it hurts anyone else, and it is time to do away with it.
So let me tell you something I found out today from an article my sister sent me, because I kept reading through the ballot, this information about all these different measures, and I kept seeing the NAACP supporting things that they would normally not be supporting. And I'm going, this is weird. Okay, so it says, read through the voter handbook for California's November election, and a name pops up over and over again, Alice Huffman. As leader of the California NAACP, Huffman has weighed in with positions that critics say run counter to the historic civil rights organization's mission, etc. Well, guess what? What the Voters Guide doesn't tell voters is that Huffman's political consulting firm has been paid more than $1.2 million so far this year by ballot measure campaigns that she or the California NAACP has endorsed. That explains it. Just thought you'd like to know that.
Yeah.
Alice Huffman was a CTA member on state council who was always in opposition to anything the majority of the delegates at CTA state council wanted to do. She is a thorn in anybody's side who's willing to pay her.
Does yes mean they do away with money bail?
Yes.
Does a yes vote?
Yes. Yes means money bail goes away.
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
a yes vote means you like the law. Yeah, okay, now I'm confusing you. I'm sorry, I'll be quiet.
Yes vote means you like the law. No, I don't like, I like the lack of money bail. No, I don't like the algorithm, but let's talk to Jose Medina. Let's talk to Richard Roth and work on the algorithm.
There you go. That sounds
Okay.
like a good plan. Sandra?
It sounds like it's an imperfect proposition, but it's better than it's better than money bail.
Well, yeah, and I think, don't we strive? Isn't that one of our chief principles? We try to treat the rich and the poor equally. Isn't that what we want to do? And so this at least is a step in that direction. I think they have a very powerful commercial where they show the young man in the Bay Area who was accused of rape and was out of jail in a flash. And then an older gentleman and it was some meager crime. And he sat, because he didn't have the money for bail, he sat there for a year.
Yeah. Another thing that happens during that period is if this person is the breadwinner for his family, they are then in extreme debt when they do get out. And so if they've learned anything useful in prison, in criminal sense.
And families borrow money so they can try and put up bail, and they'll go to those those horrible loan shark places.
No, I totally agree. We're only one of two countries in the entire world that have cash bail. And the other one is the Philippines. But what I was told was, when we went through the whole SB 10 saga, is that it's actually, if you get rid of money bail and you use this algorithm and you use judge's discretion, it's going to put more people in jail. I don't know. I mean, it's a very tough one. It's a very tough.
Is this a problem for misdemeanor nonviolent crime?
Probably not. I don't think those.
Because I would think most of them would be just released until their appearance.
Usually, I think so.
Suspects of misdemeanors.
So what do you do in case of a very serious felony?
Whoa. Somebody is innocent until proven guilty. So to have somebody in prison for 2 years waiting for a trial, and they may not be guilty, and then they end up making a plea bargain, whether or not they're guilty, just to get out of jail.
What if they're charged with manslaughter or murder?
Well, they're not releasing people without bail.
No,
The
you're not guilty
algorithm,
until you've gone.
if they're charged with a violent crime like that, the algorithm is not going to let them go out. They're going to be a high risk assessment. And yes, money bail is used on people who are arrested for misdemeanors. They are not just given a slap on the wrist, told to go away and come back on their court date. They are held.
In the county jail?
Yes.
Despite the overcrowding?
Yes.
Let us speak, please.
Suspects of misdemeanors with exceptions from needing a risk assessment to be released. That's what this Senate Bill 10 says. Okay. It also talks about categories of suspects as low, medium, or high risk. And I think a felony offense of murder or something is definitely going to fall in the high risk, which would probably require bail. Anyway, it's a tough one.
Very tough.
Yes. So did you want me to move on? Did you want to hear about the 4 that we have, the local measures that we've got on the ballot?
Oh, the Riverside County ones.
Yes, please.
The city. Okay,
Yes,
these are okay, and I'm not going to put slides up because these are straightforward. We can just go through these. They're pretty simple. So these are our charter amendments. Every 10 years we have the committee that goes through the charter amendment and makes adjustments. So we have 4 ballot measures that address amendments to our charter. First one is Measure Q. That requires if there's a vacancy on the city council with more than 1 year left in the term, the city council must call a special election to fill that seat. Now, I want you to know this amendment was brought to you by the League of Women Voters of Riverside. We had an incident 3 years ago now. There was a vacancy in Ward 7, but an extremely unusual precedent. The council at that time appointed a friend and a former councilman, and he actually said he was held that seat for over 2 years. It was like 2.5 years.
Thank you for introducing it.
And we felt
Thank
as
you.
though that was a violation of the voting rights of the people of Ward 7. That city government plays too big of a role in your life not to have your own representative who is accountable to you seated. So what this means is that if there's a vacancy and there's more than a year on the vacant term, then they'll call a special election and you will get to elect your representative. So that's Measure Q.
Thank you.
Measure R, it codifies actually what we've already started working on, and that is to comply with a state law to consolidate our municipal elections with our state elections. So in the past, we in Riverside voted every year because we'd have a state or a national election in an even numbered year. Then odd numbered year, we'd have our city council and so forth. So what we started doing is changing that so that now will be consolidated. You'll just vote every 2 years. You'll vote for city council and you'll vote for president or whatever at the same time. Okay. And Measure S requires that any city council charter amendment proposed by the city council must be sent to the charter review committee so the committee can advise the public on their recommendations for or against the measure. So if city council comes up with something they need to send it to the committee to review because they are our committee. They are the committee of the people. So they look it over for us and then they would let us know, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever they think about it. And then the last one is, we always have the last one is always the cleanup, and a couple of word changes. So this one codifies distribution of information electronically, stuff they used to post at the library. Now it's like it can be sent out via email, what have you. Addition of the word transparent in our preamble, and replace the word citizen with the more inclusive word person in Charter Section 411 that deals with speaking at public meetings. Okay, any questions about those? No, good. Oh, we're all happy.
So, since it came up at the very beginning that there are some people who missed the session on Proposition 15.
Yes.
Maybe you could just briefly, it's also, kind of controversial, but maybe you could just give a little thumbnail about it for those who missed that session.
Let's see. I don't know the thumbnail I can get, but well, the background here is Prop 13. As we know, residential, commercial, industrial properties are taxed based on their purchase price. So basically what Prop 15 does is it creates a split roll. So it assesses taxes on commercial and industrial properties at market value while continuing to assess taxes on residential properties based on their purchase price.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
For one thing, I was listening to Alice Huffman, one of her ads, and the thing is that it doesn't apply to businesses that are valued at less than $3 million. So the little barber shop and all that stuff that she claims are going to be driven out of business unless they're over $3 million, in which case they ought to be paying more.
Right, correct.
That doesn't apply to them. And the other thing is that I remember when the original one passed, Proposition 13.
Yeah.
Right.
And nobody really talked about the fact that it was going to apply to businesses. We thought it was going to apply, I'm talking about my husband and I anyway, we thought it would apply only to homeowners. It never occurred to us. I mean, I've heard horror stories about people who they sell their business, but they keep a majority stake in it, so they don't have to be. And so this closes that loophole. And I personally think it's time. Schools, my sister-in-law lost her job because of 13. She was working for University of Redlands, and school districts lost a lot of money. So if businesses want to leave this state and go to Texas, go. We still have a lot of businesses.
Well, actually though, because this is interesting, Texas, they assess at 2.56%, like every year. We're going to be at 1% assessment. So we'll actually come in cheaper than a lot of other cities. And I should have told you.
Does 15 change this? What does 15 actually do?
I just wanted to jump on the teacher education thing. When Proposition 13 was in place, California was 17th in funding for schools.
Right.
Currently in 1995, California is 42nd with school funding.
Right, exactly.
It really changed the way things where money was going.
Ruth, okay, Proposition 13 basically says, if you move into a house and it's worth $100,000 and 30 years later it's worth $1 million, you used to have to pay a much higher tax when your property was worth more money. But if you stayed in your house under Proposition 13, you would only get a small increase every year. You wouldn't have to pay taxes based on a value that's beyond when you bought the house. I think people need to mute so we're not getting all that feedback. I don't know who's, okay. So, and I think the reason it was, people mute themselves because I'm getting a lot of feedback.
What is that?
we getting bombed, Sally?
Okay, I just fixed it. Okay, so
Okay.
the reason you thought it was about homes is that that's how they sold it. The poor little old grandmother in a home who suddenly had such high property taxes that she couldn't afford it. So, but it included commercial property. So Disneyland is paying the same taxes they paid when they bought the property in the 50s. You know, a little bit more, but not as much. And so it's supposed to kind of bring the balance back so that commercial properties are paying their fair share. And that's property taxes is what goes to pay for schools, which are, as Greta said, now California schools are number 47 out of 50 in the, you know, in the United States. So that's pretty pathetic.
And all kinds of social services. And Prop 13 was, we have a beloved league member, Judith Auth, who just started her career as a librarian immediately when Prop 13 went in. And she has spent her whole career trying to raise money for libraries and just watching them fall apart right before her eyes because of lack of funding. So it's not, it's not just schools and public safety and stuff. There are all kinds of things that we can get improvement on. You want to hear fun like figures? I've got that, like how much maybe we're going to get if we pass this. Let's see, Riverside Unified School District. And this is probably high end, and this could change because it all depends on property values and so forth. But 26.8 million a year for our schools. That would be a terrific boost. Let's see, the Riverside Office of County of Education, 1.9 million. So, yeah, and then California needs to find another way to raise revenue. We can't keep depending on income, and especially income of our wealthy people. So this way, we'll just start operating a little bit more like every other state in the nation.
Are there any conditions on how the school districts will spend this money?
No, it's the same. I know that the money is collected and it will go to a fund, and then it's distributed by the same formula that they use now. And then it's up to the schools.
Sherry Bachman apparently raised her hand. Yeah.
Unmute myself.
Yeah.
Yes, a business person who owns commercial property explained to me that without this law, people like the Beverly Hills Country Club separates the ownership into 20% segments. So it's never 100%, and that's why they're taxed so low. So what this proposition would do would equalize that. And they can't do that anymore. They can't break up ownership of 20% of 5 different people and not pay their taxes.
Exactly.
And it used to be too that, that corporations and residents, it was pretty even. We paid equal amounts, but because we move more, as we're buying more houses, we're ending up paying for the bulk of property tax, and corporations using their loopholes have slowly been paying less and less and less. So this is an effort to level the playing field, as it were.
Okay, so Lori raised her hand, and then I'll read Joan Schneider's question after that. Lori?
I mean, it means that places like Disneyland and the big amusement parks will pay more in taxes too. And they're talking about huge pieces of property and huge revenue. Not right now, but obviously when this changes.
Right. And that's one thing that to keep in mind too, is that this will be phased in. Everybody's like, it's going to raise the prices of everything from, diapers to dog food. Well, it's going to be phased in. It will take our time. We're not going to, go to Safeway Corporation or whatever and say, okay, give us $1 billion. They will work it out. And that will be up, but it's not written down yet. All of that will be worked out by the legislature down the road.
Thank you. So Joan Schneider says, what about renters? If landlords are taxed as commercial, won't this affect renters, the most vulnerable? And I will say that based on the session we had last week, the answer to that was landlords charge the going rate, whether or not they're paying higher taxes. So I don't know, Joan, maybe you have.
Well, they're
some-
not, no, they won't be affected at all. The Prop 15, this is commercial property only, no place where anyone lives. Okay, so that's not apartments, that's not nursing homes, of course, private homes, all that is, that's all exempt. No agriculture, no, not farm property, you know, none of those things. Karen?
It's Ruth, but anyway, that's my daughter's name. I do have a question on Prop 23 because I've heard both sides. That's the one on dialysis. Doctors have said one thing, patients have said something else. And it's very difficult to make a decision. Is it going to be tougher on the patients if this passes? I mean, you know, that's how the ads look, but 23, I'm talking about the dialysis.
Ruth,
Greta, do you want to address that? Or?
If I could say something on this, possibly. My son-in-law is a nephrologist who specializes in dialysis. And so I phoned him and read the proposition to him. And he said, oh my goodness, if this passes, it will create a big fat mess. It will take doctors away from patients who need them right away. Whereas if something happens in a dialysis center, all you got to do is call me and I'll talk to you. And the nurses who are there know what they're doing. This is a waste of time and money. So I figure since my son-in-law knows what he's talking about when it comes to dialysis, he convinced me it's a no.
So, Joan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but this will be the last thing that will, because I don't want to keep these very lovely people who offer to educate us tonight.
Well, she's half right. Greta, did you want to speak? Because Greta looked into this one. And no.
And I don't think I'll say anything else. I think anything I might have said was covered.
23?
Yeah.
But you know, 23, this one, okay, that's one of our do-overs, right? We have these do-overs this year where we just talked about this in 2018. This one and the rent control, and there's another one. SEIU has been after these private dialysis clinics forever to try and get them to unionize. And they can't seem to do it. So what they decide to do then is to go after them with these ballot measures to hit them in the pocketbook. And my experience, and I'll tell you, 2 years ago when the first came out, and I'd speak to groups like, I talked to you guys then too, and you know, lots of other groups. And my question was always, do you know anyone on dialysis? I would ask the people, do you know, like, have they said that there's, you know, unsanitary conditions and that you know, that whatever. And everyone was like, everyone I asked, their emphasis was how awful dialysis is, but they were like, oh, the clinics are okay. I'm like, eh. So it's really hard to know so it's hard because it's like, well, SEIU keeps saying all these awful things and they need all this regulation. Well, do they? And the other thing too is these private dialysis clinics were ripping people off. They had a scam going where they were ripping off private insurance companies and they got caught and the legislature fixed it last summer. So then you say, well, should I vote for it? Well, that was what was really wrong and that has been fixed. So that's why
Connie wants to talk about rent control, but I don't think it's fair to keep Greta and Joan beyond an hour and a half in the evening.
Oh, we're okay. I'm okay. If
you're okay, just last question. Okay,
okay.
It's the rent control measure. If you're going to be gracious enough to do it.
Oh, sure. What's the rent control question?
There's one about rent control, one of the propositions. I can't remember the number.
I don't know anything about renting, so I don't know. I mean, it seems like either way you go, you're going to be hurting somebody. But
I'm sorry. I didn't hear. Was that a question?
Yeah, I don't really know what that one's about. I haven't read into that.
I don't remember the number, but it's about allowing different municipalities to impose rent control.
It doesn't It doesn't list any specific action. It gives local governments, municipalities, the ability to enforce rent control if they choose. And they tried 2 years ago to do this, and it's brought to us by the paid entirely by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation in Los Angeles, who does all kinds of work as far as social issues go. And the real estate investment companies 2 years ago came in and dropped basically $100 million anvil on the proposition, and it lost in 56 out of 58 counties and by like 40% of the vote. Now, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation believes that most voters think, well, rent control, it would be an okay tool to have in our fair housing toolbox, that it's all right to have as an option. But, these huge real estate investment companies it's all about, the real estate and investment and securities and so forth. And they do not want anybody to mess with their property values. So they're afraid if rent control goes into one little apartment, then it's going to drive down the property values everywhere. So that's sort of, I don't know, that's sort of my snooty take on it. But
what number is that?
It bothers me greatly that, the real estate and these real estate investment firms helped create the housing bubble. The bubble burst, then they come to California, they buy up all these foreclosed properties, and now they're back throwing more money at us saying, don't mess with our investment, don't threaten my investment. So, and it's gonna Prop 20, I think it's 21, the rent control one this time, it's going down again. It doesn't have a chance.
Oh, God.
In fact, I don't think any of the do-overs really have a chance. Do you guys think any of them that lost and then came back have the dialysis or rent control? Or
Well, 47 and 57 passed. The California voters passed it, and now they're trying to reverse what we passed.
Yeah, those, I'm talking about the ones we just voted on 2 years ago.
The stem cell one won't pass.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too.
Which one? I didn't hear you, Lauren.
Stem cell.
Oh.
Funding for stem cell research.
I would like to thank Joan and Greta for a very wonderfully informative session. There were a lot of nice comments. There were a lot of nice comments in the chat. I don't know if you followed them.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
This was a great group, you guys. It was fun. Thank you.
I know, because this is a treat for Greta and I because, okay, how should I put this? We're used to more low information voters. So,
we're a feisty group.
You guys have questions where I'm like, I told Greta to get ready, didn't I? I said,
you did, and I had several little different resources. I used several of them. I was shuffling papers.
Yeah, no, this group knows.
This is Temple Bethel. We're educated.
I know.
Love it.
I know.
We're very aware, our rabbi.
Because I talk to you guys every year, and I tell you what, who'll give you a run for your money are those Unitarians.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they
more than us?
Well informed.
Whoa. Okay, well, thank you so much.
I have one quick question.
Thank you.
Which propositions is supported by the
League?
No, the anti-tax thing. Howard Jarvis.
Howard, yeah. Well, just a
You're talking about Howard Jarvis.
Yeah.
Well,
in your booklet,
Prop
it's in there.
15.
I did.
Prop 15 is the Howard Jarvis people want you to vote no on 15.
Okay.
Well, and I think they want you to vote no on 19 as well.
Which one's 19?
I don't know. I just was looking at changes certain property tax rules, allows homeowners who are over 55, disabled, or wildfire disaster victims to transfer primary residence tax base to replacement residence.
Yeah.
They already have that.
Okay, we're going to let these
Thank you.
ladies go. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. It's great to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.